about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good evening, everyone. Jim here, tutor to you, and we are back for our latest GCSE Sociology live stream. Our regular slot here at 5:30 on the Monday, albeit we're taking a break for half term next week, and we are going to do our fourth session on Crime and Deviance with a focus today on crime data. It's a special day. I'm not going to explain why. Vicky and Sarah may indicate that, but the reason it's special is because they're aiming to finish by 6 o'clock today, bang on 30 minutes. I'm not going to explain why. We we are particularly delighted to welcome lots and lots of students. I can see on the ticker down here, lots of students joining us live for the session. So you get a chance to use the live chat window. Lots of activities today. Also, we'll go through some of the crime data, and Vicky and Sarah will give you some updates on some of the key topics, key concepts. Don't worry about writing it all down. All the PowerPoints will be available for you to download as soon as the session ends. Do I sound like I'm rushing? I don't know why, Vicky. What do you think? Are you going to start the session off?
Yeah, we can definitely get started. So, we're going to start this with some altered vowels that all relate to this aspect of crime. So hopefully Jim can get the PowerPoint up for us. Perfect. So we are going four key phrases, count what the key phrase is, and obviously some of those vowels, or all of the vowels, are incorrect. So let's have a look at our first one. I'll give you a couple of moments to put what you think this is. Relatively easy, but have a think about what that first word might be. So I'll just give you a couple of moments. If you're watching on replay, pause, give yourself a little bit more time if needed. So pop down what you think this word is in the chat window, this key phrase with crime and data. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got a couple of ideas coming through in the chat window. Jim, can we have these? Reported crimes. So crimes that the police have been told up, please. Okay. So again, hopefully the second word will look quite familiar. What do we think the first word might be, though? And well done, Minecraft. You were the first one through with reported crime. What do we think this one might be? Okay, well done. So our first answer in the chat window is correct. It is recorded crime. Thank you very, very much. Our next one, let's have a look. So again, the last word hopefully is nice and easy for you. There's a little bit of a pattern here. Okay, what do we think this one might be? And I probably need to add there that a recorded crime is one that has officially been logged by the police. Okay. What do we think this one might be? Well done. So our first answer in the chat window, invisible crime. So crimes that's not known about by most people, such as white collar crime, perhaps we're going to talk about a bit later, such as embezzlement, crimes that might never be found out about. Okay, we have one more to go. Again, you will notice a pattern with that last word. What do we think this might be? Okay, we've got a couple of answers coming through. I'll give you a couple more moments. What do we think this word might be? Okay, I'm going to ask Jim to put this one on the screen. Nobody's coming up with this one. So it is unrecorded crime. Crimes that have been reported to the police but not recorded as an offence, which means an investigation is unlikely to happen. We will talk about why this might happen a bit later on in this session. Okay, Jim, can we have a look at what we're going to cover today? So 4 things we're going to have a look at today. What the main sources of data on crime are. We're going to think about patterns and trends in crime and patterns and trends in crime data, thinking about ethnicity, social class, and gender with those ones. We're also going to talk about the dark figure of crime, that unreported and unrecorded crime, and we're going to think about perspectives on crime data and how reliable that data actually is, as well as a little bit of exam gold at the end. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, who's going to talk to you about sources of data.
Thanks, Vicky. And if we can have we have got the next slide. Thank you very much, birthday boy, for putting the slide up there so efficiently. We are going to have a look at official police statistics as the beginning of our overview of the different types of statistics that are available to us when we're looking at measuring crime. So, official police statistics. Now, what's looked at here is the number of crimes committed per 1,000 people. And those rates are then broken down into different categories of crime. We've got violent crime, we've got burglary, we've got different levels, different types of crime, ranging from kind of petty and going through to the more serious. And what this gives us, the benefit of this, is it does show the trends in crime. And because we're looking at it per 1,000 people, we can really see whether there's an increase. So, for example, an increase in knife crime in the previous 12 months, so we can see which areas of crime are needed to be focused on, or where we can see kind of social patterns emerging. And actually, the official police statistics currently show that the overall crime rate has increased for the 3rd year running. So we're seeing a kind of upward trend of crime being recorded. And then we've got our official crime statistics. So these are generated by police records, and this is what is processed through the CJS, the criminal justice system. And the Office of National Statistics actually claim that police statistics are unreliable. So there's quite a lot of, scrutiny and criticism around these police statistics. However, we do have these official crime statistics really giving us this trend in patterns, in criminality, and in victimization, and where we might see, increased areas of people being victim of crime, and we might be able to kind of see social patterns within there. So we've got our official crime statistics. And next up, we've got our Crime Survey of England and Wales. And this is an annual survey conducted by the Home Office. So the Crime Survey of England and Wales, there is a victim survey here. It's a representative sample of the public. So remember, it's not asking every victim, but it is a representative sample. And it is asking about crimes that they've been victim of over the last 12 months. And what that provides is actually a better picture of crime than police statistics, because it's giving us this insight into those on the receiving end. But we also need to bring in our critical evaluative voice here and remember that the recount and what the victims are saying, remember there can be other things at play, social desirability, other factors that can mean that the recount by the victims is not always reliable. So that's our three different aspects. We looked at official police statistics, official crime statistics, and the Crime Survey of England and Wales. I'm going to do a little activity here so we can get more of an insight into this idea of crime statistics. So we are going to do a higher or lower here. So in the chat, I'd like you to write whether you think the next number is going to be higher or is it going to be lower. So we're starting off with our incidence of violent crimes. And what we're told here is we have had a 0% increase. So things haven't changed in terms of incidence of violent crime. So the next one is incidence of murder. Do you think there is going to be higher and that would be, an increase above 0%, or do you think it's going to be lower? So what do you think? And you can comment in the chat. You could put H for higher, L for lower. It's up to you if you want to keep it quick. What do we think? We've got a couple of votes coming in for higher. So what have we got there for incidents of murder? 2% increase. So absolutely right. Those first few answers in the chat, higher. So incidents of murder, a 2% increase in the last 12 months. Our next one is incidents of knife crime. Now, do we think that knife crime has increased more? Are we going to see higher than murder, or are we going to see something lower? You can put your higher or lower in the comments. Oh, we've got a vote straight in there for higher. And we've also, we've got quite a few people coming in with higher. We've got one going out there saying maybe there's a decrease. We've got some guesses here of the figures. Do we think 4 or 5% maybe increase? What have we got for incidents of knife crime? Well done to those of you who said higher. Yes, a 7% increase in knife crime. And of course, when we study crime and deviance, we're looking at lots of the possible explanations for this and the social reasons behind it. What have we got up next? Is it going to be a higher or lower for incidents of theft? And yeah, someone just commented in the comments that is really high, isn't it? Increase in knife crime. And there's a lot of fantastic literature out there at the moment with lots of different explanations to that. So incidents of theft, do we think higher or lower for incidents of theft? We're comparing it to knife crime, murder, and our incidents of violent crime where we've got our 0%. And we've got a couple of votes coming in for lower. Any other takers? Theft falling during lockdown, maybe? What have we got there? Is it a higher or is it a lower? Let's see. A 9% decrease, so much lower, the lowest that we've seen so far. So theft falling during lockdown. Is that because people, weren't out and about, or there are other reasons? Could we link it to a kind of social cohesion of being in this global pandemic altogether, perhaps? Fantastic. And I'm going to hand over to Vicky now, and we're going to have a look at gender.
So we're now going to have a look at trends and patterns of crime data based on gender, ethnicity and social class. I'm going to start off. So in terms of crime data, women commit far less crime than men. They account for only about 10% of murderers in the UK. In a previous session that we did on social control, we talked about women having less opportunity to commit crime. That's based on some of the work of Frances Henderson. So if you missed that session, you can find that one on the Tutor to You demand on demand page. People believe crime committed by women is underestimated. So Otto Pollack, some of you will have heard of him, coined the term chivalry thesis to explain the way more leniently. And he claimed that crime is really inaccurate. And on the screen, you've got a picture of a knight there. The code followed by knights in medieval times. So it's a really old, but it's quite interesting. Damsels in distress, i.e. those helpless women. And he argued that criminal justice agents with arrest or charge or perhaps prosecute or convict them. And he said that they often felt quite sorry for women and in some cases underestimated women and didn't really believe that women were capable of the crimes that they had been accused of. Sometimes that's linked to those sort of stereotypes of femininity that we sort of come across. He also argued, quite interestingly, that women are often better. They're better at getting away with their crimes and manipulating people. So they're better liars. There is also there's also evidence that less serious crimes like shoplifting are more likely to be committed by women, but these often go unreported, and those doing them may get off with just a warning. So that's some quite interesting trends and patterns there based on gender. So if we then think about ethnicity, so there is a huge overrepresentation of Black, Asian, and minority ethnic in UK prisons. Only 13.2% of prisoners in the UK are Black, compared with just 2.8% of that population. So white people make up 88.3% of that prison population, but they only account for 73.8% of the UK's population. So of the prison population. There are some theories that back this up. So functionalists would argue that perhaps those ethnic groups are more likely to be living in poverty. So they may be denied that social mobility through legitimate means, linked to strain theory that we've talked about before by Robert Merton, or Albert Cohen talked about status frustration, which would also be relevant here. Marxists might believe that the majority of these crimes are that the minority ethnic groups are more likely to be from working class backgrounds, so perhaps forced into criminality for the same reason as the working classes. Our second point is that Black people are more likely to be stopped and searched per 1,000 people. So 65 Black people, 23 Asian, 28 mixed race, and 15 white. So there's a massive discrepancy there. And this is linked to racial stereotyping. It supports that interactionist theory of the effects of labelling. So people reacting to being stopped and searched, for example, without reason, and then that happening over and over again, which could lead to an arrest because people are angry and not reacting, perhaps in a way that police officers would hope. And interactionists also believe that minority ethnic groups are more likely to be brought up in areas with a high crime rate. So may see crime as quite a normal part of life. And that obviously then links to the third bullet point, the idea of 60% of white people being found guilty compared with 52% of Black people and 44% of Asians. So more likely to be wrongly charged due to that racial stereotyping. Then our last bullet point on the screen talks about the effects of institutional racism. So the racist policies and procedures that are part of the UK justice system. So a really good example is the Stephen Lawrence case and the Macpherson report. So lots of you will know about this case. It's really famous. So Stephen Lawrence was an 18-year-old boy who was murdered by a racist gang in 1993. Nobody was prosecuted for over 19 years, despite plenty of evidence, including video footage of the gang bragging about wanting to kill a Black man. And the police didn't acknowledge this racist motivation of the killers. They also made lots of assumptions about Stephen Lawrence due to his ethnicity. So this led to this Macpherson report, which concluded that the Metropolitan Police Force was institutionally racist, which is supported by that stop and search data on our second bullet point. Okay, the last one that I'm going to talk about is social class and those trends and patterns based on that. So we have data suggesting that working class people are more likely to commit crime than others, particularly crimes like theft and violence. And again, if we think back to a bit of theory, Marxists would argue that this trend is in response to capitalism and the obsession with acquiring goods, so that idea of consumerism. Functionalists might see it as a response to strain theory or status frustration, as we've already talked about. And the new right would call this the culture of poverty, where they talk about dysfunctional, jobless, welfare-dependent underclass. And we've talked about this in a previous session. Our second and third bullet points talk about how middle class people are more likely to commit that white collar crime, so things like fraud and tax evasion, and they are underreported. They're quite often quite hard to detect, and if they are reported, they are usually treated much more leniently. Victims are often unaware that they have been victims of white collar crime, and many of these crimes go unreported or unwitnessed as a result. So we're going to have a quick, one last slide here that kind of sums up some of the issues that we've been talking about. So the 2011 riots were a huge event across the country. We talked about this in our previous session when we talked about the media and how that's often a cause of crime. So in the 2011 riots, we had 90% of those rioters were black, 50% were 90% of the rioters were male, 50% were black, and 35% were in receipt of some kind of out-of-work benefit. So it supports all of those things that we have just been talking about. And it certainly supports the idea of status frustration and strain theory that functionalists would argue for. So we're going to do a missing headlines game now, based on some of the things that we have just talked about. So I'm going to show you 3 headlines. Each has a missing word. You need to pop that missing word into the chat window. So Pollack claims that something crimes are vastly underestimated and crime data isn't accurate. What do you think the answer is here? So if you can pop this into the chat window. Let's have a look. Okay, some good answers coming through. Jim, can we have the correct answer up here? Perfect. So Pollack claims that female crimes are vastly underestimated and crime data is inaccurate. Second one up, please. So Stephen Lawrence's family let down by an something racist police force. Okay, what do we think this might be? So we've just talked about this. So Stephen Lawrence's family were let down by an something racist police force. Well done. Okay, we've got good answers coming through here. Thank you very much. It is institutionally racist police force. And the last one coming up is white collar crimes are much harder to something, so result in far fewer convictions. What do we think this one might be? If you can pop your answers into the chat window. Oh, we've got report coming through. Do we think that's the correct answer? Let's have a look and see if anybody's got anything different. I think this one is slightly trickier. Okay, Jim, can we see the answer for this one? They are much harder to detect. Well done, Minecraft. You were the first one to get that right. So I am now going to hand over to Sarah, who is going to talk to us about the dark figure of crime.
Thanks, Vicky. So this dark figure of crime is really helpful when you are being critical about these official statistics. So what the official statistics don't show, it's argued, is what we call the dark figure of crime. So this is not our reported crime. So we've got reported crime, but we've also got the crime that the police have not been told about. Now, why would people not report crimes that are taking place? Well, some people feel that the crime is too trivial. So even though it is technically a crime, they don't report it, or they don't feel comfortable enough to report it. Some people feel it's kind of a private matter and they don't want to bring that into the public sphere. Some people don't want to get the offender into trouble, particularly if it is somebody that they, have links with or they know. There's often a fear of reprisal. We've all watched episodes and films about kind of witness protection, that kind of thing. So a fear of, your own safety or what the sort of comeback may be. Maybe worried about having your private lives kind of dragged through the courts and how stressful those processes could be. So some people make a kind of rational decision not to report the crime. So the dark figure of crime is indicating that there is still a lot of crime going on, but because it isn't reported, we don't have the statistics. So moving on, we've also got the idea of crime that is recorded and crime that isn't recorded. So some crime is reported to the extent where somebody goes to the police station, they make the report, but not all of that is officially logged. So it's not officially recorded, even if it is initially reported. So we think about 40% of reported crimes do not get officially recorded. Now, what are the reasons for this? And these are the reasons the police are choosing not to record these crimes because it may be seen as too trivial, because the social status of the person reporting it may not be seen as kind of worthy or reliable enough. Sometimes because a crime has been reported, but it's very hard to classify it, so it becomes a kind of paperwork issue. Promotion prospects. Sometimes there are, these kind of corruptions in the system where people are thinking about their own careers, and also possibly to do with relationships within the workplace that can mean that for various reasons, crime doesn't actually get recorded, even though the communication to report the crime has taken place. So again, this contributes to this dark figure of crime because the official statistics are not going to reflect crimes that aren't recorded. And finally, we've got unrecorded crime. It's reported to the police, but it's not actually recorded as an offence. So it means that it's not seen as, as a genuine crime. An investigation into it isn't going to take place. And we think that around 20% of reported crimes are not actually recorded for this reason. And this can include violent crime and sexual offences, where there is a kind of a difficulty in establishing whether this is something that could be recorded specifically as an offence. So again, this contributes to that dark figure of crime that we do not see in the official statistics. So this means that our official statistics are not 100% reliable and valid because we know that this dark figure of crime exists outside. Okay, so we've looked at reported crime, recorded crime, and unrecorded crime. And we're now going to do a 30-second challenge to recap some of what we have just looked at. So why do you think people might not report a crime to the police? So we're going to start the clock, and in the comments, please add as many reasons as you can think of, and we looked at this just now, why people might not actually report a crime to the police even though the crime has been committed. So if our birthday boy could give us 30 seconds on the clock, please. So what reason? So think back to why people may not actually report this crime to the police. Fantastic responses coming in. Brilliant, brilliant. Social stigma being mentioned, fear or guilt. Well done, Angela. The crime being too trivial or perceived as too trivial. Fantastic. So we had an absolute flurry of answers coming into the comments there. That was brilliant. And I think you covered pretty much everything between you. So brilliant collaboration there. So too trivial, too embarrassing. The victim may not be in a position to actually give information. So think about things like child abuse that kind of unfortunately remain in that private sphere. And also the fear of repercussions, particularly with things like domestic violence. And also mentioned in the comments, which was really valid, was the social stigma around certain issues, such as maybe men reporting crime, race and ethnicity, and those reasons contributing to why somebody might not report a crime to the police. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. And that is another 30-second challenge. What would make a person more likely to report a crime to the police? So 30 seconds on the clock, please. And in the comments, what do you think would make somebody more likely to report a crime? What kind of thing is going to happen in society that makes somebody more likely to report that crime to the police? You think about kind of extrinsic things that might motivate someone to report a crime, but you could also think about the intrinsic inner things that might make us more willing to do that. We've got some great answers coming through. There we go. Fantastic. So some brilliant answers there. And yes, you know, we could have things like financial benefits or incentives for people to report crimes, but also that trust in the police system, so that people believe that justice will be achieved. And we have one more. So well done there. One more 30-second challenge coming up. And the question here is, why don't all reported crimes get recorded? So 30 seconds on the clock, please. So have a think here. Can you recall what we talked about? Why don't reported crimes necessarily get recorded, even though the crime has been communicated? I've got some brilliant answers flying in here. Well done. Excellent. Some really, really relevant and good suggestions coming through here. There we go. So seen as too trivial. Angela, I like your point about police kind of really filtering through the reports and making their own decisions. Ideas of human error as well. Well done. Also remember, there's the fact that some crimes are hard to classify. The social status of the person reporting it. Some people, unfortunately, are not taken as seriously. And also there's the kind of behind the scenes, you know, the politics of the police station, promotion prospects and relationships at work. And I'm going to hand back over to Vicky, who's going to talk to us about the Marxist and the feminist perspectives on crime.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. That was really good. So we just got one last piece of content to go through with you. So we're looking at perspectives on crime data. So we're going to talk about Marxists first. So Marxists believe that crime statistics are unreliable and inaccurate, and that they focus too heavily on working class crime, which is much more widely reported by the media. So crimes committed by the ruling classes are often overlooked as they are seen as less serious, or people with lots of money are able to bribe others to buy their silence, meaning that they are more likely to get away with their crimes. This links back to our early discussion on white-collar crimes. So Marxists also claim that corporate crime is vastly underreported, and these are rudely under-prosecuted as well, often due to arrangements outside the criminal justice system, but perhaps between companies and the government. So Marxists really believe that crime data is not accurate at all. So let's have a look at what feminists think about crime data. So feminists think that crime against women is underreported. So we did talk earlier about chivalry thesis and how this states crimes committed by females are underestimated. But like I said, feminists also argue that crimes against women are underestimated. And a lot of this crime is completely unreported. A good example of this is sexual assault. And it kind of links to some of the answers that we've had in the chat window from the last question. So women often will fail to report this as they are worried that they won't be taken seriously. It might be linked to that victim blaming culture, which we quite often see, which focuses on what women were wearing, where they were, how much they had drunk, etc., and not really on the actual perpetrator like we should be focusing on. There was lots of this sort of discussion in the Sarah Everhard case quite recently. Read about that subsequent trial and how humiliating this might actually be for them, as they have their character discussed in detail along with every aspect of their personal lives. So many women will choose to withdraw their complaints because of this. And many women also have no faith in the justice system process, as so many cases, particularly rape cases, are thrown out and do not get that guilty verdict. Domestic violence. So this is vastly underestimated as well. On average, a woman 35 times by a partner before they will report it to the police in fear of reprisal. And the rates for domestic violence against men are also also hugely underestimated. People often feel this for a different reason. So, for example, men might feel too humiliated to actually report that case. And even if it is reported, domestic violence is sometimes dismissed as a sort of a private matter to be dealt with in the home, a domestic disagreement. And it's not really something that police may want to pursue. So we're going to have a quick go at a few true and false questions based on this. So our first one is, Marxists believe that police are more severe on recording corporate crime or white-collar crime. Is that true or false? What do we think? So Marxists believe that police are more severe on recording corporate crime or white-collar crime. Okay, so we've got false coming through in the chat window. Well done. Let's have a look and see if you are correct. Well done, it is false. Excellent. Well done, guys. Question, or our next statement. So Marxists believe that the justice system is set up to help protect the ruling class. What do we think? Do we think this is true or false? Just give you a moment to get your answers in the chat window. Okay, well done. We have the correct answers coming through. Well done, Minecraft. It is true. Okay, we have a couple more to go. So feminists believe that crime against women is over-reported. Is this true or false? Feminists believe that crime against women is over-reported. True or false? Okay, what do we think? Okay, we have some answers coming through. Let's see if you are correct. Excellent, well done. So again, false is coming up in the chat window, and it is false. They believe it is underreported. And our last statement is, feminists believe that the police sometimes dismiss domestic abuse as a private matter. Is this true or false? Excellent, well done. So we've got the correct answers coming through. Thank you very much, Jim. So I'm just going to hand over to Sarah for a very quick piece of exam practice. And then we have one more activity. And then we can let Jim go off to his birthday meal.
Thanks, Vicky. It's time for my favourite part of these sessions, and that is where we get to impart some exam gold wisdom to you. So we're going to have a look at a 3-mark question today, and the question is, identify and describe one source of data on crime. So if you are posed with this question in an assessment at school or in a final exam, again, as we've talked about a lot in these sessions, it is about choosing and sticking to that one source of data and then developing that. So your knowledge, your solid knowledge base is really important here. So choose the source that you're going to go with. So we looked at several sources today. We've looked at official police statistics. We've looked at the Crime Survey of England and Wales. There are also, other victim studies and other self-reporting studies. It's important to know how they are collected. So, for example, with the police statistics, we know that it was kind of looking at the number of crimes per 1,000 people. With the victim survey, we know that it's a sample of victims of crime across the UK, a representative sample. So it's important to have those bits of information that you can bring in to develop this response so that you can maximise this to the full 3 marks of the question. But of course, remember, this is a 3-marker. Don't go beyond the scope of the question because you need to think about your timing for the rest of the paper as well. So let's have a look at some exam gold in terms of responding to this question. So as we've said already, and as we've said every week in these sessions so far, with these 3 and 4 mark questions, pick one way, one response, one point to answer the question, and then develop it in full. And again, that little reminder, if you write about more than one method, you will not be credited for the additional methods. You are credited for the method and the development only. So the examiner wants to see your key sociological vocabulary. Have you named the data source properly? You've got to be very clear, if you're talking about the Crime Survey of England and Wales, use its official name. They want you to show that you understand how the data is collected. So you are describing And then a really good answer will also consider something like the reliability of the source of data, or why it might be criticised, or who perhaps has criticised it. So, for example, police statistics and the fact that not all crimes are actually recorded, even if they're reported. So that's our exam gold for you today. And remember, you can go back and watch this. You can have a practice of that 3 marker, and then you can come back and look at the exam gold and the tips again, and you can self-assess the response that you've created. So I'm going to hand back over to Vicky for a brilliant activity. Don't draw the short straw.
Thank you very much. This is a new activity. I'm not sure we've used it in GCSE Sociology before. It's a really quick activity. So you are going to see a question with 4 possible answers that can be ranked. Your task is to choose a third of those ranking items. So let's have a look at what our possible answers are, please, Jim. So we're looking at the likelihood of being stopped and searched by the police. So we have Asian individuals, mixed race individuals, white individuals, and black individuals. So if we rank these from the most likely to the least likely, which group do you think are the third most likely to be stopped and searched by the police? If you can pop your answer into the chat window, I'll give you just a moment to have a think about that. So who is the third most likely to be stopped and searched by the police out of that group of individuals on the screen? So what do we think? I'm just going to give you a moment to get some answers into the chat window. So the third most likely. So we did look at the stats on one of our earlier slides. Okay, so we've got a couple of different answers coming through. So we have a guess of white individuals. Okay, we've got guess of mixed race. I'll give you just 10 more seconds. Okay. Just waiting to see if anybody else is going to pop anything in. Okay, we've got Asian popping in as well. Okay, let's have a look. So can we have the correct answer? So if we have a look on the screen, we are looking, so 4 points for Asian individuals. They are the third most likely group to be stopped and searched by the police. So well done, Duncan. You are the person that got that one correctly. White individuals are least likely. So those figures that I showed you earlier are on the screen there. You can see for that the rate of being stopped and searched for black people is over 4 times that of white people. Okay, so no wonder that is such a controversial issue. Well done. Some really, really good answers today, particularly from a few individuals. So Minecraft was very impressive. Yoshiro, excellent work. And Angela earlier, some really, really, really good answers from you 3 in particular. Well done.
Superb stuff. Yeah, it's very controversial, isn't it? Stop and search, and you can see why, given those there's wide variety in proportions of who's being stopped. Really interesting statistics. We've packed a lot into that session, haven't we? Lots and lots there on crime data and all the issues surrounding it. And that example at the end there was fantastic as well, just as a way of structuring your answer for that. In that case, for a 3 marker. And I've got all the way through this session without mentioning my birthday. I don't know whether anybody else has mentioned it. I've been listening, obviously. But the way I rationalise it was, if I've not left for the party can't start, can it? So
absolutely no.
And since I'm the only one going, only kidding. And well, that's fantastic. I've been watching the live stream here as well as Minecraft. Happy birthday! That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. Been watching the live stream and the comments coming in. Fantastic answers from the students who've joined us live yet again tonight. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, give us a thumbs up, which is a big boon and a boost to Vicky and Sarah who put these fantastic sessions together. But don't forget, it's not just tonight. If you go back to tutor2.net/live, you can see it on the screen there now on the left hand side. You can go look at the entire archive of GCSE Sociology sessions, both from this term, but also lots of great sessions we did earlier in 2021. So lots that you can use, but maybe if you've got a mock or an assessment coming up after half term, well worth spending a bit of time on those. And what do you think, Vicky? Sarah, anything else to say before we finish, before our half term break?
No,
Great
just
crowd. Great crowd
Yeah.
today. Well done, everyone.
Absolutely. Hope you all have a great half term, and obviously, happy birthday, Jim.
Oh, well, yeah. You don't have to mention it, Vicky, but you're very kind. I think we're on to families, aren't we? Families after half term for our
Yes.
next live session.
Yeah.
It's our regular slot Mondays at 5:30. So we'll look forward to seeing you on the next session. So
Absolutely.
thanks very much.
Okay, good night.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Well done.
Bye.